Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit as the next three exhibits, Table 1, Table 2, and Figure 1 from Ms. Hyde's report.
Okay. There's no objection, Mr.
There's
Nettie.
no objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just Table 1, Table 2. I think the order I gave. Thank you. And thank you, Your Honor, and thank you very much, ma'am. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Nettie?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Hyde.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ms. Hyde, you just spent maybe 45 minutes to an hour, whatever the time period was, explaining to these jurors what is really a complex set of facts that led you to conclude that the 2:27 a.m. timestamp on that Google search was triggered by the closing of a tab. Did I essentially sum that up correctly?
Essentially, except it's not a 2:27 a.m. timestamp on a Google search. It's a 2:27 a.m. timestamp on a tab.
Fair enough. Thank you. And in the context or in the course of your explanation, you discussed WAL files,
That is correct.
SQLite database,
Yes.
plist database,
Yes.
knowledge C database.
Yeah. plist is not a database. Just it's a structure. So just a small correction.
Thank you for the correction. Opening tabs and closing tabs, correct?
Yes.
And other issues related to your analysis of the phone extraction, correct?
Would you call them issues? Or
Well, maybe that's a bad word to use. Other elements.
that's fair. Fair enough. Yes. Yes.
I'm really not trying to trick you. I know I wouldn't be able to. Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m.?
Can you rephrase, please?
I'm going to phrase it the same way. and hope I can
Repeat it. Repeat it, please.
Thank you. Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th of 2022?
That timestamp is not indicative of a time of search. So the question is difficult to answer because I can't say that that timestamp tells me anything about the time of search.
Okay. So as I take your answer, you're not denying that the timestamp and whatever you get from that timestamp doesn't rule out that the Google search was done at or before 2:27 a.m., correct?
If I'm understanding your question, there was a double negative, so I just want to clarify. The question is if the timestamp could exist because of a search happening at that time?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is your analysis of the phone does not rule out that the user of that phone performed that Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
There is no indication of a Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
But again, I'm getting to whether you can rule that out, ma'am. That's really the crux of my question. Can you rule out that the user of that phone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th?
There is a very unlikely possibility based on the fact that there is no evidence that the search occurred before that time. That's just like saying that the user searched for pandas at 2:27 a.m. Could you rule that out? I can't rule out something that doesn't exist.
Well, you would agree with me that with regard to your analysis of this phone extraction, you were given very specific instructions in terms of what to look at, correct?
Correct. I had a very limited scope in this analysis.
And who was it that gave you that limited scope?
That scope was relayed to me by Detective Tully.
Okay. And Detective Tully instructed you specifically to only look at the part of the phone extraction that dealt with the Safari search history.
Safari search history specific to January 29th, 2022. That is correct.
And he instructed you not to look at anything else on the phone, correct?
I looked at related artifacts such as such as what was being done at that time, the phone being on, the phone being used, but not anything else outside of that, correct?
And you were not instructed, for instance, to look at other user activity on the phone, including examining call logs on the phone, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that if you were allowed or instructed to examine the call logs, that could reveal deletion of calls that morning, correct?
Of course. Well,
Okay, the objection sustained.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor. No redirect.
Ms. Hyde, you are all set.
thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Lally, your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth would call Trooper Joseph Paul to the stand.
Step up, just watch step for me. Just show us the evidence in the court during case I'm here to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, afternoon.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Trooper Joe Paul, that's Paul.
And how are you employed, sir?
I am currently employed with the Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you been a trooper with the state police?
I have been a trooper for approximately 8.5 years.
And,
Or sorry, 12.5 years. My apologies.
And where is it that you're currently assigned within the state police?
I am currently assigned to our collision analysis and reconstruction section, otherwise known as CARS or Recon.
And how long have you had that assignment to the reconstruction of cars?
That one's for about 8.5 years.
And with respect to your assignment to that unit, prior to beginning with that unit, let me ask you this first. As far as the cars unit is concerned, about how is that sort of divided up as far as is there certain regions that you would specifically cover?
Correct. We have four separate regions across the states. We have Southeast, the Northeast, Central, and the Western.
And which of those are you assigned to?
I am assigned to the Southeast.
And geographically, how much territory are we talking about that the Southeast covers?
Anywhere from Boston down to the Cape, Marks, Nantucket, anywhere southeastern part of Massachusetts.
And currently, how many troopers are assigned to this specialized reconstruction unit within your Southeast region?
Within our Southeast region, we have, I believe we have 9 now.
And is there some kind of on-call system that your unit operates by?
Yes.
And can you describe that to the jury?
So we rotate every day. Our on-call is for 24 hours from 0700 to 0700 the next day.
Now, with respect to yourself, upon or prior to you entering into the cars unit, what, if any, specialized training do you want to go in regard to crash reconstruction?
So when before I got into the unit, I was sent to 3 separate classes. Each class was 40 hours long. So the first class is basic at-scene crash investigation. Next one's advanced crash investigation, and the other one's traffic crash reconstruction.
And with each of these trainings that you underwent prior to being assigned to the cars unit, and some more that we'll talk about in a moment, with respect to each of the trainings that you've been part of or undergone, is there some sort of certification that you receive in regard to a successful completion of those trainings?
Yes, each one has its own certification.
Now, with respect to, since you've been working with the cars unit over the last several years, what, if any, additional specialized training have you received in the area of crash reconstruction?
Since I've been on, I've been into probably about 877 hours of education in the units. That's anything from bicycle crash investigation, human factors. I'm currently certified through Borough Level Examiner and a technician. I'm a CDR analyst and a CDR technician trainer. Just recently I've attended multiple seminars, and most recently I attended a seminar in Houston on EDR data retrieval.
Now, among those other trainings that you received, some of those trainings pertain specifically to pedestrian crashes.
Correct.
And in addition to the training that you've received through the state police, what, if any, professional organizations do you belong to in regard to crash reconstruction?
Yes, I am currently part of NAPARS, which is the National Professional Accident Reconstruction Section, and I'm also certified through ACTAR, which is the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstruction.
Now, if I can focus specifically just for a moment on the ACTAR certification, can you explain to the jury sort of what goes into that, and as far as that certification is concerned, how does one obtain it?
Okay, so first thing you do is you got to submit an application to ACTAR to be allowed to take the test, and part of the, you got to tell them how much education you've had, how many crashes you investigated, basically anything within the crash investigation world. And then once they find that you're accepted to take the test, then you got to set up a time for the test. We did it as a section throughout our state, and the test is a 2-part test. It's a practical and theory portion of the test. Each part's 4 hours long, and you got to pass both portions to be certified through ACTAR.
So there's a written exam and a practical portion of the test as well?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury sort of the practical portion? What does that consist of?
The practical portion is you basically have to analyze a collision. So they give you a simulated crash, and you have to go through and document the evidence. You have to answer a series of questions based on that specific crash, so where you find the speeds, the distances, times, and everything else related to that collision.
And you successfully completed and received that certification, sir, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how long ago was it that you first received your ACTAR certification?
In 2019.
And how long is that sort of in perpetuity, or is there a sort of continuing educational component attached to it?
There is a continuing educational component attached to it. The test is it's certified for 5 years, and within those 5 years, you still have to maintain a certain amount of education to reapply for ACTAR again.
And with respect to that ACTAR examination, are you familiar with sort of the success rate or the passing rates when it comes to that examination?
Correct.
And what is it?
It's fairly low. I can tell you within my unit at the time I took it, there were probably 20-something of us that took it, and only 3 of us passed it at the time. Yeah, it's not a very high pass rate.
Now, over the course, let me ask you this: when you first sort of enter into the cars units, are you just you go through the training and then you are on call and get sent out on the road by yourself, or how does that work?
No, you first get initially assigned to a field training officer, and then at that point you shadow the field training officer to various crashes.
And is there any sort of set time period for how long that shadowing process goes on for?
It's not really a set time. It's more based on experience, on how many crashes you go to and how much experience you have in the field. And then they basically, well, if they feel that if you're deemed qualified, then they'll send you on your road on your own.
And over the course of your years within the cars of the reconstruction unit, approximately how many crashes have you responded to and investigated?
As of now, I've been to approximately 196 crashes, and I've probably assisted on another 100, 150 crashes.
And of all those crashes that you've responded to and investigated, if you know percentage-wise or number-wise, approximately how many of those have been crashes involving pedestrians?
I know I've been to approximately 55 pedestrian crashes, and I've assisted others on pedestrian crashes also. So I mean, 55 out of 196.
Now, with respect, if I could turn your attention to January 29th, 2022. Do you recall that date?
I do.
And at some point over the course of that date, were you contacted by somebody in regard to a pedestrian collision that occurred in the town of Canton?
I was.
And do you recall who was it that first reached out, or how did you first become aware of this?
My sergeant, Sergeant Brian Mahoney, was the one who called me at the time.
And initially, as far as your involvement was concerned, what was your understanding as the initial request for your involvement?
My initial request was to image the airbag control module, do inspection, test the vehicle, and map the scene out.
Now, you've used that term a couple of times. If I could just ask you to explain it a bit for the jury. When you say an airbag control module or an ACM, what is that, and what do you understand that term to mean in the context of crash reconstruction?
The ACM is the module in a car that controls the airbags and the seatbelt pretensioners.
And what you were referencing before as far as being a CDR, having taken CDR trainings and being a CDR instructor, what, if any, relationship does the CDR have to ACM?
CDR is just a crash data retrieval software. It's the software that we use to image or download an airbag control module.
And can you explain to the jury sort of the process of physically sort of how that's done as far as what are you doing to the vehicle in order to download that information?
Yes. There are two ways really to download a vehicle. It's either one is direct to module or just direct to the vehicle through the DLC port or the diagnostic link connector. The direct to module, we don't use a direct to module if a vehicle had no power. Then we would have to go directly find the module inside the vehicle and go right to that specific module. But if the car has power, we would go right to the DLC port, which is the same port that you see when you're like a technician would do the diagnostics on a car. They would plug underneath the steering wheel, and then we'll extract the information from there.
Now, once that information is extracted, what if any training have you received in regard to reading or interpreting the data that's extracted from it?
Yes, I've been certified through as a CDR analyst, and I've taken 2 classes on it now.
Now, sir, turning your attention to February 1st, 2022. On that date, where, if anywhere, did you go in relation to your investigation of this?
I went to the Canton Police Department.
Now, at some point prior to that, were you made aware, or did you do any research into sort of what the weather was like around the time? What was reported to you initially as around the time that the crash occurred?
I reported that I know it was snowing and turned to a blizzard at the time.
Now, initially on February 1st, 2022, where did you go?
Canton Police Department.
Now, sir, at some point in time on that date, did you also have occasion to go to a residence or a street called Fairview Road in the town of Canton?
I did.
And specifically, there was a address that you were directed to, is that correct?
That's correct.
And who, if anyone, did you go there with?
I believe it was one of the Canton Police officers, Lieutenant Paul Gallagher, I think his name was. I met him there.
And without anything specific as to what was told to you by Lieutenant Gallagher, what was sort of the purpose of having Lieutenant Gallagher there with you at that time?
He was going to show me where basically the evidence that they have at that point was.
Now, in addition to that, were you also able to, you're familiar with another specialized unit within the state police called the CERT team?
I am.
And at some points, did you have access to certain diagrams created by Lieutenant O'Hara within the CERT unit?
Yes, I was.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 135 and 136, actually, just review that when we finish. I'm sorry, Mr. Gaffney, just You recognize those, sir?
I do.
And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to just publish that briefly for the jury.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could actually have Exhibit 136. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on screen as Exhibit 136?
I do.
This is the diagram that you were able to view from the created by Lieutenant O'Hara from the CERT team.
Yes, it was.
And what's contained, at least from this overhead shot, is that fair and accurate trail of the roadway or conditions of the roadway, absent obviously weather at the time that you went out there on February 1st.
Correct.
You can take that. Thank you. Sorry, give me your honor if I can just have 1 second.
Sure.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I'm going to retrieve that from you. I'm going to put 2 other photographs before you after they just look those are completely finished.
Yep.
And do you recognize those, sir?
I do.
What do you recognize those to be?
They are pictures that were in my report. They're Google images of the roadway.
And one facing from the northbound direction, one facing from the southbound. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'll also introduce the witness next to the exhibit.
No objection.
Okay. I'll need you.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could just publish these first return to the witness and then publish the brief.
Yes.
Trooper, directing your attention to the screen. What you have before you is that, what's up on the screen, excuse me, is that what you have before you now marked as a 582?
Yes, it is.
And if you could, there should be a laser pointer on the desk somewhere there before you, sir. If you could, just using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to sort of what we're looking at in this particular photograph of the road.
All right. So this is Ferry Road, facing northbound. 34 Fairview Road would be onto the left in this area.
Now, with regard to the roadway, when you went there, what if any observations or what if anything did you know about sort of roadway surface or markings on the roadway or the general overall condition of the roadway?
The roadway was, there's no significant difference, anything significant with the roadway.
As far as the roadway material, were you able to observe whether or not it was sort of asphalt, concrete, or anything?
Right. Yes, it was an asphalt roadway.
And as far as the markings within the roadway, what if any observations you made of those?
There was double yellow center line, white fog lines both sides of the edge of the road. Is that what we're going after, the roadways?
And then as far as adjacent to the roadway or adjacent to the fog line, what if anything did you observe there?
So as you look at the picture, the left side has asphalt curbings. These are about 5 inches tall, same on both sides, and there's a sidewalk along the right side of the roadway here.
And the side of the asphalt curbings, that's the same side that 34 Fairview was located on, is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Young, if I could have the next slide. And Trooper Paul, if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before you, I think it's 583. And again, sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you, is 583?
Yes, it is.
And if you could, again, using the laser pointer, just briefly direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, you know as far as from this perspective.
Yeah, so this is the southbound. 34 Fairview would be on the right side here.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that. Can I approach this retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, Trooper, with regard to the roadway as far as Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note in regard to postings regarding the speed limit on that particular roadway?
Yes, the posting for speed limit is 30 miles per hour. At this area, it's only posted 30 miles per hour for northbound operators, and I believe it was like 19 Fairview Road was posted in front of. For the southbound operators, it was not posted.
And so for a northbound operator, that would again be someone where the residents of 34 Fairview Road would be on the left-hand side of the road, is that correct?
That's correct.
And with regard to the width of the lanes, or what, if any, measurements did you take in regard to the lanes or the roadway itself?
Yeah, each travel lane was approximately 12 feet, and the overall width was approximately 27 feet.
Now, as far as measurements being conducted with regard to the scene, what, if anything, did you use or employ to make those measurements, or what, if any, devices did you?
Yes, I mapped the scene with a Leica GNSS GPS total station, and also used a drone.
That's a UAS, is that correct?
Correct.
The drone, I mean?
Yes.
And with regard to each of those, as far as the GPS mapping and the drone, have you received any sort of specialized training in regard to employment of each of those tools?
Yes, I have been certified to use the Leica, and I've also have a Part 107 license for the drone.
Now, as far as starting with the Leica or the GPS, if you could explain to the jury sort of what that is and how you use that device in order to, as you termed it, map the scene.
Yes, it's essentially what surveyors use to make roadways. It uses satellites and GPS data plus cell phone data to make marks on the roadway, or actually not marks, but just mark points in the roadway that are within millimeters of the device.
And with regard to the drone device, sir, how does that, can you explain to the jury sort of how that works and how that's used?
Yeah, so the drone, and we fly the drone around the area, we set it to set up a grid pattern to fly around the scene. And while it's flying this grid pattern, it takes a series of photographs, and these photographs are also GPS marked. So once we get all the photographs in, we throw it into a program, and the program will essentially stitch us all together. And then once we get that picture, we throw it into a diagramming system.
And that diagramming system, have you also received training in regard to utilization of that diagramming system?
Yes, I have.
And the one that you're currently using within the car's unit, what is that diagramming system or software called?
It's IMS 360.
And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you 4 documents, asking you to just review those. Finish. And do you recognize those, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are the diagrams that we print out through the program.
And the last one is the drone image, is that correct?
Yes, they're all drone images. The last one is just one that was put into my diagram, and I labeled it as a drone image.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm also seeking to introduce the next 4 exhibits.
No objection.
Okay.
Yes, that's my fault. Thank you very much. Sure. Now, Trooper Paul, are you familiar with the term, well, let me ask you this, in regard to the roadway itself, what, if anything else, beyond sort of lane width and overall width, what, if any, other measurements did you take there?
So we took measurements for the evidence.
Let me ask it this way, as far as with elevation and incline of the roadway, what, if any, measurements did you take in regard to that?
Yeah, so we took the elevation and roadway measurements, or the elevation for the roadway.
And where in relation to the residents at 34 Fairview did you take that? Sort of the entire street or just in the general area of that specific address?
In the general area of that specific address.
And from your measurements as far as, well, let me ask you this, how is a measurement regarded to elevation or incline? What kind of tool do you use for that?
We have a level, the digital level, that we'll place on the roadway, and we'll get a measurement from that.
Now, with regard to the measurements that you took of the elevation or the incline in the roadway, anything, or what, if anything, of significance did you find from that?
So this road had approximately plus or minus 1 to 2 degrees.
So nothing significant, is that fair to say?
Nothing significant, yes.
Now, sir, through your training and experience as a crash reconstructionist, are you familiar with the term related to crash reconstruction called roadway evidence?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that term is and what types of things could be termed as roadway evidence?
Roadway evidence is anything that's related to the collision you're investigating at the time. It could be anything from vehicle debris, gouge marks, tire marks, anything that's related to a vehicle or whatever type of crash you are investigating. It could be vehicle or pedestrians.
So any sort of anything from either the vehicle or pedestrian as well, is that correct?
Correct.
So pieces from a vehicle, holding items from a pedestrian, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to both your review of the CERT team diagrams as well as speaking with members of the Canton Police Department, were you able to then plot certain pieces of roadway evidence onto those diagrams that you that I just showed you a few moments ago?
Yes, I was.
Now, with reference to, you're familiar also through your training and experience when it comes to pedestrian crashes, as far as sort of the physics or kinematics of how pedestrians interact with vehicles in the course of a collision?
Yes, I am.
Now, I'm going to ask you just a couple of terminology questions when it comes to items that are involved in a collision, sort of simple Newtonian physics, Newton's first law. Can you explain what that is to the jury and sort of how that pertains to any collision between two objects?
The first law?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the when an object stays in motion or stays at rest, will stay at motion or rest until acted upon by an outside force.
Now, with respect to, are you familiar also with a crash reconstruction term called final rest?
Yes, I am.
And are there different derivations of final rest as far as controlled final rest versus uncontrolled final rest?
Correct.
And can you explain just first to the jury what final rest means in relation to crash reconstruction, and then what, if any, differences there are between a controlled final rest and an uncontrolled final rest?
Yes, the final rest is what we use for describe the area where a pedestrian came to stop after the collision. It's immediately after the collision. This is where they first stopped, or a vehicle. Usually after collision, it's where this vehicle first stopped. And a controlled final rest is when an operator actually controls the vehicle to the stop, and as opposed to the uncontrolled final rest is when there is no control, usually acted upon by outside forces that will control the vehicle or pedestrian to its final rest.
And, Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could publish what's now been marked as Exhibits 584 through 587 for the jury.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could first have the diagram. And Your Honor, may I approach this to return the
Yes.
to the witness? Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to zoom in just a little bit on that. And now, Trooper, what you have up on the screen is that what you have before you as first in that set of exhibits.
Yes, it is.
Now, using the latest word before you, if you could, I would ask you to draw your attention or direction to what, if anything, of significance you have noted within this diagram.
Okay. Let me use the pointer?
Yes.
Okay. So in this time, I labeled each part of evidence. So right here would be the pedestrian's final rest, and they're all, since there's so many put together, everything was labeled with a red arrow. That would be pointing to where the final rest is. And this is where a glass cup was found, and these are the red and clear plastic pieces. That's where they were found, and the pedestrian shoe was found here. The smaller versions here in the light blue is one's a fire hydrant, flagpole. This is a label for the street 34, and obviously the street name Fairview Road here.
Now, as far as measurements were concerned, what, if anything, were you able to do to measure sort of between different points of roadway evidence, or specifically from the pedestrian or Mr. O'Keefe's final rest in reference to other items that you have depicted on the diagram?
So, you're talking about on these diagrams, I can hard to see here, but it is a scale diagram. The diagram itself is scale. Once you put it roll up to the actual paper, it's scale. I've also have on here, sorry to see, but there's things right here. They're called ground control points. They're little X's on the roadway. They are used for the drones imaging, and using the drone imagings, we'll use those in order to help put all the pictures back together. At the time of this, I measured between each point from ground control point 1 to 2 and put it as approximately 50 feet, and 2 to 3 is 50 feet, and 3 to 4 is 50 feet. So it kind of is the second way to measure off the diagram, and also using the program to measure to different points while using the diagram.
And as far as starting with the shoe that you have depicted in this diagram, what was the measurement of the shoe away from Mr. O'Keefe's body?
I believe the shoe was approximately, I don't know my thing, it's approximately 10 feet away.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, may the trooper refer to his report as to the specific measurements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Honor. Trooper, with regard to the shoe, how far away approximately was that from Mr. O'Keefe's body?
9 feet.
And did you also have a measurement for how far away the glass cup pieces were from Mr. O'Keefe's body?
Yeah, 1 foot.
And for the red plastic you have labeled on this diagram as A, how far away from Mr. O'Keefe's body was that?
7 feet.
Now, with regard to the directionality, you also measured sort of directionality as far as the 9 feet that the shoe was away. Which direction was it?
Each evidence was measured from the pedestrian's final rest. So the shoe was 9 feet southeast from the pedestrian's final rest.
And if you could, using the laser pointer on the screen, as far as the directionality of support, if you could first direct the jury's attention to where Mr. O'Keefe's final rest is, and then as far as the directionality of southeast from that, where is it?
Okay. So right here, pedestrian's final rest. It's more right there. The shoe is right here, so it would be kind of southeast. I have an arrow pointing north to kind of give it extra.
And the glass cup that was 1 foot away, which direction was that?
It was about 1 foot north. I think it was found like within, right next to him. So.
And the red plastic that you have labeled as A, again, that was 7 feet. Which direction was that, sir?
That one was east, so it was right here.
And as far as the clear plastic, what was the measurement and what was the directionality for that item, sir?
10 feet southeast, so right over here.
And the red plastic that you have labeled on the diagram as B, how far was that and what directionality was that?
That was 12 feet southeast, and that was found right here.
Thank you. Sir, if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before your diagram number 2, and if I could have that, please. Sir, do you recognize what's depicted up on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, again, using the laser pointer, what, if anything, of significance do you observe in this particular diagram in reference to the roadway evidence?
It's just essentially the same diagram. It's just a closer up version of it. So you have, yeah. So you saw the pedestrian's final rest, glass cup, glass plastic pieces, the shoe. It's all still depicted in the diagram.
And the red arrows that you had indicated, delineated, depicted sort of from where the words are to where the items were. Is that present in this diagram as well?
Correct.
If I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before you, and if I could have diagram 3, Ms. Gill. And again, sure, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
I do.
And if you could just describe to the jury what are we looking at in this diagram?
Yeah. So this is just a closer up to the evidence. It's a little smaller scale.
And these diagrams are created from photographs that you took with the drone overhead on that day of February 1st. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if I could direct your attention to the last exhibit within those images. And again, sir, if you could, you recognize what's up on the screen?
I do.
And could you describe to the jury again using the laser pointer to delineate what, if anything, is significant you observe in this drone photograph and diagram you have?
Yeah. So this is from my report. It's the same diagram. Has the same amount of evidence on here. There's a house. There's a light pole here. These lines here, which I mentioned earlier, were the edge of the road and the edge of the sidewalk.
Thanks. And when you can take that down.
All right, Mr. Lally, why don't we pause here for the luncheon recess? All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Your Honor, with court's permission, may we have exhibit 587 back up on the screen?
Yes.
And this, again, that's the drone image. Mr. Paul, direct your attention to what's up on the screen. It's now been marked as exhibit 587. Again, this is the last of the set of 4 diagrams of drone images that I presented before you before, correct?
Correct.
Now, with respect to the evidence, specifically pieces of taillight that are depicted within this diagram, did you put every single piece of taillight that was recovered on January 29th within this diagram?
No, I did not.
It's fair to say you did also not put every piece of taillight that you were aware was recovered over the course of this investigation and depicted in this particular diagram.
That's correct.
Now, with respect to this particular area of Fairview Road, understanding that you were there in the daytime, correct?
Yes.
However, when you were there in the daytime, what, if any, note did you take as to sort of overhead lighting or available sort of ambient street lighting in the area?
Yeah. So on the top corner, I'll try to right up here. There's a light pole right there. Overhead light pole.
And with relation to where you've marked as far as the final rest position of Mr. O'Keefe and the other areas of items of evidence that were recovered from the scene, was there any lighting in that particular area?
There wasn't.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Mr. Officer, we can have that's back. Thank you very much. Now, turning your attention, sir, back to February 1st, 2022. At some point, you were at the Canton Police Department, correct?
Yes.
And where specifically within the Canton Police Department did you go?
To the back in the garage area.
And within the garage area, what if anything did you do in the garage area?
In the garage area is where we imaged the airbag control module.
And so, I'm sorry, it's fair to say the vehicle, the defendant's vehicle was located in that garage area?
That is correct.
And you imaged that vehicle, and what, if anything else, did you do with respect to that vehicle that day?
At that point, we just analyzed the damage to the vehicle.
Now, at some point, did you perform any sort of mechanical inspection of the vehicle?
Yes.
Was that day or at some later?
It was that day.
And was that within the garage area itself, or where did you perform the mechanical inspection of the vehicle?
We analyzed a little bit of the steering and the brake pedals while I was sitting in the garage. Then we did testing with it on the in the driveway next to Canton PD.
Now, sir, starting with a visual inspection of the vehicle. You want to approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you two photographs. Ask you to just review those, look up when you finish. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
They are crime scene photos that I've attached to my report.
You're on the call, multi-seat to introduce in a minute the next two exhibits.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yep. Sorry.
Thank you. 588 and 589. Thank you.
Your Honor, may I return those to the witness?
Yes.
And Your Honor, report submission.
Yes.
Thank you. One moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen right now?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that?
That's one of the crime scene photos that I attached to my report.
And what's contained in this, is that a very accurate portrayal of sort of the front of this vehicle, looking at it from the passenger side?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have the next photograph, please. And Trooper, do you recognize what's up on the screen now?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that?
That's a crime scene photo that I attached to my report with notations that I made on it.
And what's contained in this photograph, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed in the rear passenger side area of the defendant's vehicle in the garage on February 1st?
Yes, it is.
Now, step back a little bit here. With regards to what you've noted within this, if you could, using the laser pointer before you, just direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in your inspection of this area of the Lexus.
Okay. So on the left side here, I put down the scratches, and there's a dent there. The broken tail light here was here. There's some scratches on the bottom right rear bumper here, and there was glass from a cut back on the bumper.
As far as the glass on the bumper, what, if any, observations did you make of that in relation to the vehicle itself?
It appeared to be from a cup as opposed to any glass that came from the vehicle.
Objection.
So I'll strike the first part of the answer, but the second part will stand.
I have no objections to the second part. Thank you.
Now, with regard to the dent that you've delineated within this photograph, did you take any measurements from the ground as to where that was located?
Yes, I did.
And how far did you measure the dent to be approximately from the ground?
Approximately 48 to 50 inches from the ground.
And what, if any, measurements did you take as far as from one part of the vehicle to the other, as far as where the dents were located?
So it was approximately 19 inches from the right side of the vehicle.
Now, the scratches that you were talking about before, where were they in relation to the dent?
Right above the dent. I can see right there. As my hand's shaky.
Now, as far as you obviously also made observations of the driver's side tail light as well.
Yes.
And so, from what you observed of the driver's side tail light versus the passenger side tail light, what, if any, observations did you make as far as the color of the pieces that you found missing from the passenger side tail light?
As a comparison to the left side of the tail light?
Yes.
So on the left side of the tail light, there was red and clear plastic pieces.
Now, the scratch marks along the bumper, did you take any measurements with relation to them?
Yes.
And specifically, did you take measurements from the ground to where they were located?
Yes.
What did you measure those?
They were approximately 27 to 28 inches from the ground.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Trooper Paul, we can talk about a mechanical inspection of a vehicle, just first in general terms. What is it that you're doing with respect to the vehicle in order to conduct that mechanical inspection?
So when we do mechanical inspections, we're obviously checking the steering, make sure the steering moves properly, the brake pedals, make sure they are firm, make sure the saddle pedal moves back and forth. Just generally looking at the tires, make sure there's no issues with the vehicle.
And what, if any, observations did you make of the vehicle itself as far as any defects or anything to do with the braking, the tires, or any of the other areas that you inspected?
We didn't observe any mechanical defects with the vehicle.
Now, with relation to the weight of the vehicle, what, if any, analysis, what, if anything, did you determine as to the weight of the Lexus?
The way the Lexus item was an analysis was just based on I think I have the gross vehicle weighting for the vehicle.
And how much did the vehicle weigh according to the gross weight?
I think it was approximately 7,000 pounds.
Now, with respect to the lights of the vehicle and being the taillights and the headlights, what, if anything, did you determine those to be as part of what type of lights were they?
They were LED. Both there were headlights and taillights were both LED type.
And if you could just expound a little as far as LED lights, what if any significance does that have to you, or what kind of lights are LED? How bright are LED lights?
LED can, well, most comparison to what most people think in car and tail lights, where they have the bulbs, where they have the filaments. LED is more electronically controlled. They sense, there's a sensor that will light up, as opposed to a bulb type headlight and tail lights.
Now, are you familiar with an organization called NHTSA?
Yes.
And what does NHTSA stand for?
It's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
And what, if anything, did you do with regard to NHTSA in respect to this vehicle itself?
We run the vehicle through NHTSA to see if there's any recalls on the vehicle.
And what, if any, recalls did you discover when you ran this particular vehicle through NHTSA?
There were no recalls.
And to be specific, we're talking about this specific vehicle as opposed to just Lexuses in general, make and model, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we put the VIN into the system, and it will tell you if this vehicle has any recalls to it.
Now, you indicated on February 1st at some point you did some testing with the vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And where was that testing done, and what did it consist of?
It was done in the parking lot of Canton PD on the same day. We did a forward braking test, a reverse braking test, and a reverse acceleration test.
Now, the parking lot of the Canton Police Station where you did this, what kind of roadway surface was that?
It's an asphalt surface.
So similar to the asphalt surface at 34 Fairview Road, is that correct?
Correct.
And what was the condition of the roadway as far as how dry or wet was the roadway when you conducted these acceleration and braking tests?
It was wet at the time.
And with respect to your understanding of January 29th, 2022, with the asphalt surface in front of 34 Fairview Road, what was the condition weather-wise as far as that roadway surface at the time of this collision?
At the time of the collision?
Yes.
Well, my understanding is it was snowy, so the asphalt road had been fairly wet from snow.
Now, when you conducted these acceleration and braking tests with the defendant's vehicle, what, if anything, did you, what, if any tool or what, if any, implement did you use in the course of that testing?
We use a device called it's called a V-Box. This one's a V-Box Sport. The device is attached to the windshield, and it's also attached by an antenna that goes to the roof. And then basically V-Box, do you want to explain what V-Box is?
Please.
Okay. So a V-Box is just, it measures performance for the vehicle. It uses GPS data to measure the speeds and its location. We use that just to, it'll give us how fast we were stopping, a drag factor for the roadway for that specific vehicle and type of road, and acceleration factors. So we attach that to the windshield, just kind of give me a way to check its acceleration, check its performance.
And sorry, you're on one moment, please.
Sure.
So the V-Box is attached to that vehicle, so it's what specifically is it measuring?
So yeah, it's using the GPS data to apply its location, and so it's measuring its speeds and using the speed and the location, putting that together. And once you use the app on through the V-Box, and you set certain parameters as like you can go I want 30 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, and it'll set your vehicle. So when you go to 30 miles per hour, it'll tell you what you're doing at 30, what you're doing at 20, what you're doing at 10, and then it'll know if you're doing braking or acceleration tests. And it'll use those numbers that you have to give you, your acceleration factor or braking factor for the vehicle.
And so from the V-Box Sports device that you use, and you've received training as it applies to using that device?
Yes, I have.
And certification as well?
It's usually just the training on it.
Now, with respect to the V-Box Sport as it's attached to that vehicle, that's measuring specifically from that vehicle with those tires on that roadway surface that day, correct?
That's correct.
Now, with regard to that testing on that day, you did some acceleration or reverse acceleration tests, is that correct?
Correct.
And how many of those tests did you conduct?
2.
And you describe to the jury sort of how you conducted those tests or what speeds you were using or sort of that process of the 2 reverse acceleration tests that you conducted that day.
So the reverse acceleration test we conducted, we set the parameters up to 25 miles per hour. So what we did is we tried to come from a stop at 0 and then press the accelerators all the way, about as hard as I could press it, and try to go back and see how fast I can get to 25 miles per hour and see what the performance it did at that time. And
what, if any, kind of data did you receive with the V-Box Sport using during those 2 reverse acceleration tests?
It gave me an acceleration factor. It gave me its speeds and times and distances that it was at each location.
And if you could explain to the jury, sort of when you say acceleration factor, what is an acceleration factor?
It's just a number of how fast a vehicle could travel from an acceleration. It could be a light acceleration to a medium acceleration, a hard acceleration. They all have a different number that you can use to kind of relate it back to what the acceleration is for that vehicle.
And what was the acceleration factor that you were able to obtain with those 2 reverse acceleration tests?
I believe this was I had 0.317, I believe.
Now, during the course of those the reverse acceleration tests that you conducted on that day, what, if anything, did you know? Well, let me ask you this: as far as the operation of the vehicle, who was actually physically operating the vehicle?
I was actually operating the vehicle.
And what, if anything, did you note during your operation of that vehicle during the reverse acceleration test that you conducted?
We also noted the accelerator pedal moved freely. There was no binding. There were no interference from anything on the floor. Nothing interfered with the accelerator pedal. It worked as it's supposed to.
And when you're doing this reverse acceleration test, how are you, if at all, are you manipulating the steering wheel at all, or is it a straight line test, or how is the test, how is the vehicle directed during the test?
So I try to keep it fairly straight.
And when you accelerated in reverse in a fairly straight fashion with the steering wheel, what, if anything, did you note about that?
We kept the vehicle fairly straight. It was fairly easy to keep control of.
Now, in addition to the 2 reverse acceleration tests, what, if any, testing did you do with regard to reverse braking?
Yeah, so we conducted 2 reverse braking tests.
And again, similar, could you describe to the jury, this is also with the V-Box board attached, is that correct?
Correct.
So you're obtaining data from that as well?
Yes.
And during the course of the reverse braking test, what, if anything, first as far as data is concerned, how fast were these tests being conducted? What, if anything, was input, and what, if any, data did you receive from?
Yeah, so the reverse braking one, we try to get up to about 30 miles per hour, and then once we got to that speed, that's when we would apply the brakes, try to brake the brakes fairly hard to try to get the vehicle to stop.
And are you also familiar with the term known as a deceleration factor?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury what that?
It's just essentially the opposite of an acceleration factor. This is a number for how fast the vehicle would slow down.
And with regard to the deceleration factor from the 2 reverse braking tests that you conducted on that date, what, if any, figure did you receive from the instrument, from the V-Box board?
For the reverse braking?
Yes.
I believe this one was so it gets you a drag factor number for this vehicle too, and it's our deceleration factor, which both are used the same way. This one was a point, I think it was 7.1.
Now, with regard, again, you're operating the vehicle during these 2 reverse braking tests, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
And what, if anything, did you note in regard to the operation of the vehicle when you were conducting these 2 reverse braking tests?
Yeah, the brake pedal was firm. There was no pulsation from the brake.
Now, in addition, sir, were you able to conduct some forward braking tests?
Yes, I was.
And similar again, if you could describe to the jury as far as how you were operating the vehicle during the forward braking test.
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing as reverse. If I was going forward this time, I got up to 30 miles per hour, and I would just apply the brakes about as hard as I could apply them to the stops.
And again, are you receiving from the instrument some sort of deceleration factor?
Yes, I was.
Did you recall what that was?
Yeah, it was a 0.69.
And during the course of your operation of the vehicle during the forward braking test, again, what, if anything, did you note in regard to the operation of the defense vehicle?
Same as before, the brake pedal was firm. There was no pulsation, no issues.
Now, you talked a little bit about the ACM or an airbag control module, correct?
Correct.
You indicated earlier in your testimony that you had downloaded information from that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you download that information, what, if anything, do you get from the vehicle, or what, if any, how are you able to sort of read or interpret that data?
So in the airbag control model, it's equipped with it's called 8-bit data recorder, an EDR. And in that data from the EDR, we will use the BOS CDR software, and we'll attach to the vehicle. And then that software will basically extract the information or image the information that's in the module. And so that information could range from getting us speeds, if there was braking, if there was steering wheel movements, basically like looking for change of velocity, that type of. So there's a lot of information around the vehicle.
May I approach you?
Yes.
When your documents are 7 pages in length, it's necessary to review that before we finish.
Sure.
Do you recognize that document, sir?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
This is the document that gets printed out through from the airbag control model through the crash out retrieval software.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm up to seek to introduce the minutes in that exhibit.
No objection.
Okay. Exhibit 590.
Now, sir, when it comes to the CDR printouts, or let me ask you this. When it comes to the airbag control module, who is that designed to protect or to apply to in respect to safety measures with the vehicle?
Applies to the occupants inside the vehicle.
And this may sound a little terse when I say it, but essentially the airbag control module is typically not designed to protect people on the exterior or the outside of the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Now, you've been involved in a number of crash investigations involving pedestrians, correct?
Yes.
And as far as this particular case, what, if any, sort of useful or significant information were you able to interpret or retrieve from the ACM?
And this through the software, there was no data recovered, or no events recovered.
And when it comes to pedestrian crashes in general, and as far as there being no data in this case, is that something that's abnormal?
It is not.
Explain to the jury sort of why.
So what an airbag control module is doing, as it's running, it's constantly monitoring the vehicle. It's looking for like a sudden change of velocity, like a collision. So once it feels that sudden change of velocity, essentially we'll wake up and monitor the vehicle, see if there's people wearing seatbelts on, what's the speed of the vehicle, a number of different things that it could look for. And all it wants to do is either do I deploy the airbags or do I tighten the seatbelts. So most motor vehicle crashes with a car-on-car crash, there will be a higher change of velocity. So that's usually kind of what it's looking for. Pedestrian crashes are going to. There's not going to be much change of velocity to the vehicle. That means when they both interact with each other, the pedestrian is not going to change that vehicle's velocity in such a quick manner as, say, two cars would strike each other.
Now, with respect to crash reconstruction in general, are you familiar with the term called delta V?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what that term means as far as what is a delta V and what is it measured?
So that's kind of what I was saying about the change of velocity. So the change of velocity. I mean, like change of velocity, like it's also within a certain amount of time. So change amount of speed within a certain amount of time. So,
And with respect to the vehicle as it applies to crashes or collisions involving pedestrians, and I think you've said a little bit about this, but what, if any, impact on the velocity of the vehicle would striking a pedestrian typically have?
very little.
Now, specifically when it applies to pedestrian collisions in general, are you familiar with the concept of linear momentum?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what that is and how it applies with pedestrian crashes in general?
Linear momentum. Momentum is essentially when two objects interact with each other. They come in with momentum and they leave with momentum, with essentially the same momentum. And linear momentum just means something that's in line with each other.
Now, as far as we talked a little bit earlier in your testimony about roadway evidence, when it comes to your experience with pedestrian collisions, what, if any, relationship does that linear momentum have in relation to roadway evidence that you would expect to find at a scene of a pedestrian collision?
So when a pedestrian strikes a vehicle, they will go in the direction where the vehicle was traveling. So if the vehicle is traveling one way, the pedestrian strikes, it will go essentially that same way, depending on what part that vehicle strikes.
Now, as far as other items that the pedestrian may either have in their hand or other items of looser fitting clothing, what, if any, experience do you have as far as observations of those on collision scenes involving pedestrian collisions?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon for pedestrians to lose essentially any sort of loose clothing. So shoes, belts, hats, anything that's not very strapped on very well, could leave the body.
And as far as directionality is concerned, when it applies to that linear momentum that you were speaking of before, those sort of loosely held or handheld items, or would glasses be included within that as well?
Correct.
So those types of items, as far as directionality is concerned, what, if anything, can you tell the jury about that?
Yeah, so they will go in the same direction the pedestrian travels post-impact. We usually use that as kind of a post-impact path of travel for the pedestrian, showing that this is the direction that they would have traveled from where they got struck.
Now, are you also familiar with the reconstruction terms known as area of impact and point of impact?
Correct.
And can you explain what those terms mean in a crash reconstruction context for the jury?
Yeah, so an area impact is essentially the area where the crash happened, where these two vehicles or vehicle pedestrians, where their initial impact happened. Point impact is the same thing, it's just more down to like that specific point at that specific area. Area can mean a little bit broader in that sense.
And what are some of is this something that is delineated somewhat, at least by roadway evidence?
Correct.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of what types of roadway evidence that would lead you or any crash reconstructionists to formulate an opinion as to the area of impact?
Yeah, so like I said earlier with the path of travel, so a lot of collisions most of our collisions we start where the final rest goes, and we follow the debris or the clothing, we're back to where, follow that path back to where it came from. And we know within that area, that's where an area impact would be.
Now, with relation to the evidence that was depicted on the diagrams that were up on the screen before as the exhibits, what, if any, relationship would the taillight pieces and the shoe that were recovered from the street in front of 34 Fairview Road have in relation to that area of impact?
Yeah, so they were found alongside the roadway. So I know that they were found, the area impact had been somewhere within the roadway and probably somewhere at the beginning, just prior to the beginning of the first point of evidence that we found.
So somewhere toward the first point of evidence contained within that debris field, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, have one more?
Yes.
Now, sir, are you also familiar with a safety system specifically applicable to Lexus vehicles?
Yes.
And have you seen training in regard to downloading information in regard to that as well?
Yes.
And what is that safety system? What is that called?
It's called the Toyota TechStream software.
And so the Toyota TechStream is a software similar to the crash data retrieval or CDR software that you're talking about, but just specific to a Lexus?
Yeah, but it's between Toyota and Lexus has software. The TechStream, it's similar in the fact that they both record data to the vehicle. TechStream was created by Toyota for their technicians to diagnose vehicles and use that information to help, any kind of mechanical issues that they would have with the vehicle. That when you bring your car to them, they can look at the TechStream and just kind of find out what caused the mechanical issue.
Now, with respect to the Toyota TechStream data that's available, what kind of data are we talking?
So TechStream, yeah, they also did diagnostic stuff, so they're looking for any engine defaults or anything else. But they also have what's called a vehicle control history in it.
Sorry, I missed that. Called what?
A vehicle control history.
Thank you.
And the vehicle control history it's basically monitoring people's driving behavior. So it has certain, they call it triggers that they have listed. And when those triggers are met, they will record data related to that trigger.
And what type of data, in general terms, what type of data are you able to recover through the Toyota TechStream tool from the vehicle control history?
Yeah, so each trigger, you can record this the same as the get your speeds, brakes, the accelerator pedals on, look for steering wheel angles, engine RPMs, all all the information that you have related to vehicles.
Now, in addition, is it possible with vehicles that have some vehicles made that are accessible through this Toyota tech stream, including Lexus, which I should say, I'm sorry, so Lexus is manufactured by Toyota, correct?
That's correct.
So in some vehicles, Toyota or Lexus vehicles are made by that manufacturer are equipped with camera systems, is that correct?
Correct.
And again, in general terms, what, if anything, in relation to the camera system, is it possible to collect from the vehicle control system?
The camera systems in certain vehicles can record photos, like little grainy black and white photos.
And were you able to recover any black and white photos or photos of any kind from the defendant's vehicle in this case?
I was not.
Now, with respect to the sort of physical process of the downloading using this Toyota tech stream tool, can you explain to the jury sort of how that's physically done or what you're doing to the vehicle in order to download that information?
The same kind of software, just different software as we would for the airbag control module. As I said before, we plug it into the DLC port and then open up that software program, and we follow the steps, and we extract the information from the vehicle.
Now, the extraction of the Toyota tech stream data in this particular case, when was that accomplished?
For this one, I believe it was February 2nd, 2023.
So a year and a day after you had conducted the braking and acceleration test and inspected the vehicle in the Canton Police Department garage?
That's correct.
And so as far as the timing of that being February 2nd of 2023, why was that?
I was at the time of my initial inspection, I didn't really know much about TechStream at that point. So over time, I kind of learned about TechStream. And so once I learned about it, and I thought, is this relevant to our case? And I looked more into it and found that it is relevant. So.
And the Toyota TechStream, as far as that applicability or that tool, is that a relatively newer tool in the area of crash reconstruction?
It is getting fairly newer, as it's getting spread out. It's getting bigger. It first got created on one vehicle in 2014. So it's been slowly trickling into the Toyotas and Lexus vehicles over time. But it's definitely gotten bigger within the past couple of years.
Now, with regard to this information, when you were then able to download that information, you received some data, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned that it goes, or it's measured sort of by triggers, is that correct?
That's correct.
And from the data that you were able to obtain from the defendant's vehicle, what type of data were you able to retrieve as it relates to the vehicle control history?
Yeah, so this had like a page and a half full of triggers that over the vehicle's time span that it captured.
And with respect to the triggers, how many triggers did it capture?
It's like a page and a half. I don't know exact numbers of how many triggers that was on each page, but there was, it's at least a page and a half full of triggers.
Your Honor, may the trooper refer to his notes and refer to that? The trooper, if I could direct you, I think it's page 9 of your report.
Okay.
And how many triggers was it, sir?
Can you count them?
Does he have to count them, Mr. Lally?
No, I don't think he has to count them. Sir, if I could direct you to paragraph 23.
Oh, yeah, so 22 separate triggers. So on my report, it says 22 separate triggers that occurred on odometer mileage 12665 to 12666.
And with regard to the mileage that you noted as far as being between miles 12665 and miles 12666, that's 12,665 to 12,666, correct?
Correct.
And what was the mileage that you observed on the vehicle at inspection?
12,665.
And at the time that you conducted this Toyota TechStream download from the vehicle, what was the mileage at that time?
12,666.
And there's also reference within the vehicle control history data in regard to something called a key cycle. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what key cycle is and what are the different things that could trigger a key cycle?
Key cycle is essentially, so it's from the ignition cycle. Let's take sorry. So a key cycle is essentially from when the vehicle's off, it's pressed on. It doesn't necessarily need to be running or turned on. It just needs to be turned on and then off again, and that'd be one key cycle. Now,
with relation to your analysis in regard to the vehicle control history, what, if any, role did the key cycle numbers, or what kind of role did that play in your analysis?
It shows me where, how far away they were from each other, the key cycles were.
And how far away in what terms, sir?
So when I turned the vehicle on, when I did my testing, it showed me what key cycle was that I was on when I did those testings and the odometer mileage in relationship to that.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you the documents. Just ask you to look at that. Look up. Finish. And do you recognize that, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
That is the table from the vehicle control history from my report.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm off to introduce the minutes next exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. The 591.
Your Honor, may I have a moment and then return it to the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask to publish this to the jury. Paul, what's up on the screen is that the exhibit that you have before you?
Yes, it is.
Now, if you could, using the laser pointer before you, just direct the jury's attention to what we're looking at in this exhibit and what type of information where it's located within this exhibit.
Okay, so this is the vehicle control history. Every single point here, this is where the triggers are. This is the labels for each trigger. Odometer mileage is on this label here. These are the elapsed time and key cycles. I have noted through arrows here, these were when the vehicle was with us, and a lot of this is related to my testing with the vehicle. And these right before that were the triggers that were prior to those testings.
Now, from the within this table, sir, there are two triggers reported at odometer mile 12,629.
Yes.
And what's the key cycle associated with 12,629?
1,162.
Now, these triggers that are contained as far as the 12,629, that's prior to the.
Okay, you have to either come closer or speak up even louder, Mr. Alley.
I will speak louder.
There's no microphone near you. That's the problem for the court reporter.
My issue is, Your Honor, there's no light over here.
All right, so let's turn the light on and then you can ask your question, then we'll turn the light right back off, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. My apologies. So that odometer mile, as far as two triggering events, at 12,629, correct?
Yes.
And that occurs prior to the 12,665, 12,666 during the course of your braking and acceleration test, correct?
Correct.
And the mileage difference between those two, did you do that math?
Yes.
What was the mileage difference between the two?
36.
And how many key cycles were different between your testing and that odometer reading of 12,629?
2 key cycles.
Now, as far as the, what if any information did you have and where did you get it in relation to the defendant's vehicle's path of travel prior to those odometer readings that you noted when you did your braking?
Yeah. So yeah, I was told that where she traveled afterwards or prior to that. I was noted their locations, and I used those locations through Google to get a mileage for them.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Oh, you another document, sir, do you recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
Those are the Google directions. I put them in a table and put them in my report.
And may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I want to introduce you to the exhibit.
No objection.
Did you?
May I have 1 minute, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I return to the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could publish it to the jury.
Okay.
If you could enlarge, zoom in just a little. Now, Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen as the next exhibit before you?
Yes, I do.
And these are, again, if you could explain to the jury sort of what we're looking at here and how you came to these mileage totals.
Yes. So when I got the directions, it showed that we got from 34 Fairview Road to 1 Meadows Ave. And when I put that address onto Google, it gave me suggested routes. So I put each suggested route on there and the time it took. So I did that with every direction from 1 Meadows Ave to Waterfall to 12 Country Lane, and 12 Country Lane to 1 Meadows Ave, and then 1 Meadows Ave to 345 Country Hill Drive, North Dayton. So I did that for every single one and find suggested routes. So which is labeled in all these boxes here. And then at the bottom here, I did a total distance, and I did a min and the max distance of, and the minimum was 36.1 and the max distance of 38.8.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to take that down for a minute, and I'll see counsel at sidebar, please.
Now, in addition to those distances there depicted in that exhibit, sir, have you also looked at a mileage or distance between, I'm sorry, the first up there was as far as 34 Fairview Road to 1 Meadows Avenue, was that correct?
That's correct.
And that gave you sort of 3 different routes to travel, is that correct?
Yes.
And the minute of the max was 2.2 to 2.6.
Correct.
Now, if you were to add that as an additional sort of distance travel to the 36.1 and 38.8 that you had calculated, how much of a difference does that make?
Between the two min maxes?
Yes.
Only 2.7.
And as far as your analysis that we're about to discuss, adding in that approximate 2 points, whatever miles, how much of a difference does that make to your analysis and ultimate conclusions in regard to the VCH or vehicle control history data?
I was going later, but so the 36 is just within the realm that she could have traveled 36. The odometer mileage is the odometer mileage, so 36 is 36. That's what's on the vehicle. So within the realm of possibilities that the vehicle could have traveled 36 miles after the 2 triggers that are in this vehicle.
Now, with respect to that minimum and max as far as the 36.1, 38.8, what, if any, relationship does that have to the difference in the odometer readings that you observed between when you conducted the braking test and when you observed these 2 triggering events that you were talking about at the earlier mile?
That's it. No difference. The odometer mileage is the odometer mileage is 36.
And so I guess what I'm asking, sir, is the 36 miles, is that within the range of the 2 triggering events that you were just talking about?
Yes, it was.
Now, as far as within your report and your analysis, did you come up with sort of a label as far as these two different triggering events that you observed?
Yes, I did.
And that incorporated the mileage, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was, again, 12,629, is that correct?
Yes.
And then as far as any further label that you put on it, how did you label it?
I labeled them as in when they occurred. One's 12,629A and one other one's 12,629B.
And with respect to the A and B, which one occurred first?
The A occurred first.
May I approach, Ron?
Yes.
Another document asking you to review that. Finished.
Yeah,
And do you recognize that?
I do. It's the data chart from the 12,629 miles A chart.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm also seeking to introduce them as the next exhibit.
No objection.
The 593.
Again, if I could just have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
May I return this to the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Report submission,
Yes.
So we've got before you what's now up on the screen. Do you recognize that as what's now being marked as the next exhibit?
I do.
Is if you could describe to the jury sort of what these rows indicate as far as what information is there, and if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this as far as 12,629 miles A.
Okay. So each row starting from the top is the vehicle control history time, which is the time that's recorded in the module itself or in the software that gets recorded as each time, and it's recorded as seconds. This time is the time from the start of the key cycle. So it starts off with 652.8, and each one is incremented in approximately half-second increments up to, let me show it, right here where the trigger, this is what's called where the trigger happened. So right here is where it kind of goes from 4.5 to 4.6, and then it goes up to 5. Then everything after that is about half-second increments from each other. Recorded 10 seconds of time, which is labeled in this one total time of 10 seconds. And I'll split time from trigger, just kind of label it back to, here's the trigger right here, and that's the time between each one. Sorry if I can read this right. So right here, this is the vehicle speeds. The blue is just labeled because that's the speed. Zeros are labeled as the light blue is 0. So if I could read this. So it starts from, shows that the vehicle is traveling at 9.9 miles per hour. It's slowing down to about 0 right here, and then stops for that time, and then increases back, speeds back up to. It goes up to 6.2, and then slows back down to 0, and then back up to 1.7 to, I think it's 8.7. If I can read that right. And next below for us is miles per hour to kilometers. This is the accelerator opening ratio, which is really where this trigger comes from, because the trigger is labeled as the accelerator pedal opening angle is medium to higher immediately after shifting to reverse, or I label it as R.
If I could stop you there just for a second, sir. As far as the accelerator pedal opening angle,
Correct.
can you explain to the jury sort of what that term means and how that relates to sort of the operation of the vehicle?
So the accelerator pedal is, the part where everybody puts the foot on and gets the vehicle to go. So the pedal, so this is what's showing how far the pedal was actually pressed by the operator of the vehicle. And that gives you a percentage of that. So if it's, a zero's not pressed and 100% it's all the way down. So they label the trigger, I think 30% is medium to higher in this way Toyota labels it. So and that's where you'll see the trigger is around 31.5%. And it also shows start from the beginning, goes from 0 and increases up to 50.5%, and that's 5 seconds. That's only, a little over a second past the trigger. And so it's 50% and then back off, and then back onto the accelerator again, up to 34%.
Now, as far as this data is concerned for the VCH data from the Toyota tech screen, what, if any, information are you able to glean as far as directionality, as far as forward, reverse, left, right, things like that from this data?
So on this label right here, so it shows the shift position signal. 1 is forward and 2 is reverse. So this right here is showing the vehicle was in drive and going forward, and then the vehicle got shifted into reverse, and then back to drive again.
Now, from your experience and from your training when it comes to interpreting this type of data, do you have any opinion as to sort of what type of maneuver or what type of actions the vehicle was taking during the course of this triggering event?
Yes, this appears the vehicle was slowing down and making a U-turn, because also the other thing into it shows steering signal, and the steering wheel showed that she was driving left and then right and the back left again, and also when she's on the brake switch.
Thanks. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Sir, if I could just retrieve the one we got before.
So,
The document that I've just handed you now, do you recognize that?
yes,
And what do you recognize that to be?
it's the one, the data chart from my report was labeled as 12,629 miles speed.
So that's the second triggering event within this same mileage reading on the odometer, same key cycle?
Correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Come up, seek to introduce the next exhibit.
No objection.
Okay.
The 593.
Again, just one moment, Your Honor. May I approach the witness?
Yes, and for the sake of taking the best use of our time, if they're in evidence for the rest of this afternoon, both of you can then just ask to, just go ahead and put them up and not ask for permission this time.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could. And true or false, you recognize what's up on screen now?
I do.
This is the VCH data chart from that same mileage or the second triggering event as far as 12,629 miles peak, correct?
Correct.
And again, this is in the same odometer range as well as the same key cycle as what was just up on the screen as far as 12,629 miles A, correct?
Yes.
And this occurs after A, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Now, similar to before, when it comes to this VCH data up on the screen, if you could, using the laser pointer, demonstrate to the jury what, if anything, of significance you note with respect to this data.
So for this one, same label as before, as you said. The vehicle history time is, if I can see that, the trigger time is 1,142.2 seconds after key cycle. And this one shows all the same thing, 10 seconds of data. And it was good. So the vehicle speed on this one shows that she's slowing down. It's 13.7 miles per hour and gets down to 0. Then she's down to 0 for a while, and then the vehicle speed increases up to 24.2 miles per hour at its max speed. Then it goes down to 23.6 as the last two labels. And the accelerator pedal angle at this point at key trigger is 36.5 and increases up to 74.5%. And it stays around 74.5%, 74, 73.5, and 74.
Now, that's 74.5% as far as the pressure being applied to the accelerator pedal, correct?
Correct.
And with respect to that, 74.5, that's about 3/4 down, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with regard to this data from 12,629 miles of B, what, if anything, are you able to tell from this data as far as when that occurred in relation to 12,629A?
So they occurred about approximately 8 minutes. So 1269A occurred 8 minutes prior to the other one, and they both occurred within on the same odometer mileage.
Now, with respect to the duration of the data that you were able to obtain from this one, specifically 12,629 miles B, what kind of duration of data are we looking at in this particular table of chart?
Say that again.
How long a period of time is this?
So this is from the start of key cycle, or just this one?
Just this one.
Okay. So this is 10 seconds of data.
And with respect to that 10 seconds of data, as far as the 24.2 miles per hour, when does that occur within the 10 seconds of data for this particular event?
So the 24.2, as I'll point out, is right here. It's actually around the 9-second mark.
Now, similar to the other charts for A that was up on the screen a moment before, is there an indication as far as the accelerator pedal opening angle?
Yes.
And what, if any, significance does that have, or what, if anything, does that indicate to you from this data on screen?
It shows that the accelerator pedal angle went up to 74.5%. So as out of 100%, it went up to 74.5%.
Now, with respect to directionality for this, what, if any, data is contained within this chart in respect to that?
Yeah, so on the bottom row, it shows the steering signal. It just shows slowing down zeros like 0.5, 9, 13.5, 13.5. I think it's 13.5, 0, 4.5. And we're talking about steering wheel, how far does the steering wheel move from left to right? So that's the degrees of a steering wheel angle.
Now, as far as when the vehicle is shifted sort of from drive or neutral or park or whatever it was, at some point is there an indication in this data set on this table as far as when the vehicle was placed into reverse?
Yes.
And how far into this 10-second data set was the vehicle placed into reverse?
At 4 seconds, it's right here.
And so am I correct then that there is a 5-second difference between 4 seconds when it's placed in reverse and 9 seconds approximately when it achieves that 24.2 miles per hour?
Correct.
Now, as far as the 74.5% pressure that's placed on the accelerator pedal, when is that reported in seconds in relation to the 10-second data set in this table?
74.5 starts at the 8-second.
Now, as far as this trigger is concerned, I understand from your testimony that the maximum speed is 24.2, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the vehicle speed recorded at the end of this 10-second data set?
23.6.
Now, as far as the vehicle being in sort of different sets, as far as drive, reverse, things of that nature, what, if anything, did you observe within this data set as far as how it is at the beginning, how it changes at all? What happens with regard to that in the data set?
So this one shows that the vehicle was in drive. It starts off in drive. It's slowing down to 0, and it goes to 0, which is neutral. Then goes down. Then it goes into reverse. So it's going straight, it stops, then it's placed in reverse, and then goes back, goes in reverse.
Now, as far as the reverse is concerned, you indicated there's also some steering angles that are recorded with this data.
Yes.
And what, if anything, was recorded in this 10 seconds of data? Specifically, I'm asking from the time that it goes to reverse to the end of the set, the end of the data set. What, if anything, do you observe with reference to the change in the steering angle of the steering wheel?
It does not change much. It's only 13. I think as far as it goes, it's left. It's at 13.5%. So that's only, if the steering was a circle, the whole circle is 360 degrees. So 13.5% is only, and it's still fairly straight in the vehicle and at 13.5%.
So from this data, this vehicle is backing up in the manner of about 5 seconds or so, in a fairly straight line, and achieves a maximum speed of 24.2 miles per hour, correct?
Correct.
And even at the end of this data set, the vehicle is still traveling approximately 23.6 miles per hour.
Correct.
Now, as far as the small deviations in the steering that you were testifying about, based on your training and experience, what, if anything, would cause that?
Well, the steering wheel was obviously caused by operator traveling only small amounts, about right, and up to here. So it's only just operator steering at those small deviations.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Let me grab that one.
Yep.
And present you with another document. You recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
It's a more of a closer up snippet of that document that I have attached to my report.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Hard practice. Call the seat to introduce him as the next exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead and publish it if you're inclined to.
Okay. Trooper Paul, from what's depicted up on the screen as this next exhibit, if you could, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this portion of the data.
Yeah, so I circled in here the drop from 24.2 to 23.6, and also the steering wheel signal went from a left at 4.5 to a right 4.5, so positive to a negative. And also the same thing with the accelerator opening ratio kind of stays consistent at 74%.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm showing you another document.
Okay.
Do you recognize that?
I did.
What do you recognize that to be?
It's a vehicle control history distance chart I calculated and attached to my report.
And may I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'll want to see if you can introduce him as the next exhibit.
No objection.
Okay. So go ahead and publish it if you're inclined.
The 596.
Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen? It has now been marked as exhibit 596.
I do.
And again, if you could, using the laser pointer, let me ask you this first. As far as this table and this information up on the screen, I should have asked you this before. How was this table created, and what, if anything, does this illustrate?
Yeah, so this illustrates from the chart of 12,629B. I started from when the vehicle was placed into reversed, and when it immediately goes from 0 and travels up to 23.6. Just that's like the last part of that last chart we had.
And what, if anything, were you able to do as far as distance travel, and how were you able to determine that?
So I used the vehicle speeds and the time, and calculated a distance that the vehicle traveled during this time.
And as far as the total distance traveled from the 0 to the 23.6 at the end, what was the total distance there?
97.35 feet.
And with respect to the vehicle's maximum speed, as far as 24.2 miles per hour that's recorded within this data set, how much distance had the vehicle traveled prior to achieving that 24.2 miles per hour?
62.51 feet.
Thanks. May I process to retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, Trooper Paul, with regard to, based on your training and experience, with respect to this type of data and crash reconstruction in general, this particular set of data from, who's the name again? From 12,629 miles B, what, if any, type of collision is that data set consistent with, and why?
Yeah, there's a point there where it appears to be consistent with a pedestrian strike.
And why is it that your interpretation of that data you feel is consistent with the pedestrian strike?
It's the sudden change of speed at 24.2 to 23.6 and a half second, while the accelerator pedal is still at a consistent 74%. And also the steering wheel angle goes left at 4.5 degrees and also goes right to 4.5 degrees and then goes back to left after that. So right at that spot is something that's consistent with a pedestrian strike.
Now, with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, the pedestrian in this collision, what, if any, data were you able to see or review in relation to your reconstruction analysis in this case?
Say
As far as Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did you learn about his injuries?
Like what types of injuries he had?
Yes.
Yeah, there were blunt force injuries. I mean, it was abrasions or lacerations, and blunt force injuries.
And the injuries that you observed or that you were informed about, you learned this from the medical examiner, is that correct?
Correct.
And with respect to the injuries that Mr. O'Keefe was recorded as having sustained, according to the medical examiner, what, if any, relationship did those injuries have to you in relation to a pedestrian collision?
Sorry, say it again.
As far as the injuries that you were informed by the medical examiner that Mr. O'Keefe had sustained,
Yes.
What, if any, relationship did those injuries have in relation to a pedestrian collision?
They are consistent with a pedestrian collision.
And how so?
Due to, we can break down each injury due to the arm, the lacerations of the arm from the tail light, the dent with the scratches for his hand could be. Those are something that would be consistent with this in this particular case with striking the Lexus.
Now, specifically with reference to this case, what, if any, analysis did you conduct with regard to kinematics?
Yes, I did a kinematics analysis in my report. Kinematics deals with the aspect of motion.
And I'm sorry, if you could expand
Yeah.
upon that just a little bit and explain to the jury sort of what kinematics analysis is.
So kinematics analysis is, like I said, it deals with the aspects of motion. Pedestrian crashes get kind of labeled in certain types of how they interact. So in this particular case, I kind of labeled it as it's a forward projection crash with a side swipe. And what I mean by forward projection means that when a pedestrian gets struck by a vehicle, well, basically the principal impact forces are above the pedestrian's center of gravity, as in this case where you get the higher back of the vehicle. When you get struck by something like that, it projects you forward in the direction of the vehicle. And in this situation where he gets more struck through the side of the vehicle on the taillight area, that it projected him to forward and then to the left due to this like more of a side swipe manner.
Now, with respect to the, you mentioned the height of the vehicle, as far as the shape of the back of the vehicle, what, if any, relationship does that have in regard to you sort of labeling this as a forward projection / side swipe collision?
Yeah, due to being pretty flat, it's not the front of the vehicle. We have the hood, and the pedestrian staying above the hood. It's the back of the vehicle. It's pretty flat and it's pretty higher up.
Now, with respect, you also made aware through your review of the medical examiner's report that there was injury to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head.
Yes.
And based on your training experience in particular to pedestrian collisions, what, if any, significance did that have in relation to your opinion as to how Mr. O'Keefe interacted with the defendant's vehicle?
So when you look at the damage, he would have interacted with that left side of the vehicle. And when he got struck by the vehicle on the left side, it would have caused his vehicle to rotate kind of counterclockwise. And then when that rotation, he could turn it into his back, and his back could have struck the ground. I noted at the scene that there was asphalt curbing, which could have, somewhere he could have struck his head in there, or somewhere along any of the pavement would have caused damage. Most forward projection crashes have damage on both sides of the body.
Why is that?
Due to them get projected forward, so they get hit from behind, they have damage to the back, and then when they get projected forward, they get damage to the front. So, I mean, in this case, he got projected and got spun counterclockwise due to where he got impacted the vehicle.
Now, with regard to the vehicle speeds, kinematically speaking, from your analysis in respect to that, what, if anything, can you say in relation to, just in general terms, as far as a pedestrian collision is concerned, how much of that vehicle speed would a pedestrian be assuming in the context of a pedestrian collision with forward projection?
Forward projection will have almost 100% speed post-impact. And more, like I said, in this case, it's more the fact that he didn't get 100%, like his center mass didn't strike the vehicle, so he would not have been thrown 100% of the vehicle speed post-impact. His right side would have sustained the vehicle speed, and that would cause him to spin out. So as opposed to traditional forward projection, if he was right there in the middle of the vehicle, he would have projected forward, and he would have sustained, his full body would have sustained the vehicle speed.
Is that abnormal as far as the sort of forward projection type of pedestrian collision? What I'm going to ask is specifically to not having any contact with sort of the bottom of the vehicle or being run over or something like that. Can you expound upon that a little?
Yeah, due to the side swipe manner that projected him off to the left, it wouldn't show that he would have been, the car would have ran over him, traveled over him. Like traditional,
Yeah,
the car
I'm
would,
going to ask you to slow down just a
sorry,
little bit.
sorry. Yes, so due to the situation in this scene where he got projected to the left and body rotated, it would have rotated away from the vehicle, and his body would not have traveled under the vehicle, as you do in like a lot of traditional forward projection crashes. The vehicle would get tracked forward ahead of the vehicle, and that vehicle could possibly travel over that pedestrian.
So that is not what you found in this particular pedestrian collision, correct?
Correct.
I know you mentioned it a couple times, but if I could ask you to just expound a little bit when you're talking about center of mass and how that relates between sort of a pedestrian and a vehicle in a pedestrian type collision.
So pedestrians, almost every object has a center mass. Pedestrians is the same. So if a pedestrian center mass is essentially to the half the body, and you would also put down is around the chest area, just below the chest area would be a center mass for a pedestrian, and they all range based on height and body shape.
And so where on someone's body typically would a center of mass be located?
Usually just around the chest area, or just below the chest area.
Now, if I could turn your attention, Trooper Paul, back to February 1st of 2022, when you were at the Canton Police Department. You mentioned that, or you testified earlier at some point, that you went outside to an asphalt roadway surface and conducted some forward acceleration and rear acceleration braking tests, correct?
Correct.
Now, in addition to that, what, if any, other testing did you do with respect to that vehicle on that particular date in that location?
We checked the cameras, and in the back we did backup visibility analysis with the cameras in the vehicle.
And again, if you could, just in general terms, first, just describe for the jury, when you say visibility analysis, typically speaking, what are you doing in a visibility analysis?
In the visibility analysis, we are trying to see what an operator would see in a vehicle. Looking for, in this particular case, we're trying to see if the operating vehicle would be able to see a pedestrian behind the vehicle. And also in this, where we have backup cameras, we're trying to look at the cameras and see what would the cameras pick up as we would go into reverse.
And in fairness to the defendant, at this particular time when this visibility analysis was conducted, it was during the daytime, is that correct?
That's correct.
Your understanding of the crash is that it occurred at night, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as a visibility analysis, typically, would you be looking to recreate as close as you can to the conditions at the time that the collision occurred?
In most typical cases, yes.
And why were you not able, were you able to do that in this case?
We were not.
And Why?
Due to was mostly, like I said, it was mostly done when we were trying to see what a pedestrian, an operator would see a pedestrian. It's mostly done because it's an accident, but a lot of times when it's like an intentional act, visibility is not an issue in this situation. We were just want to make sure that the cameras worked and then backup sensors all worked in the vehicle.
Now, as far as this particular visibility analysis that was conducted in this case, how, if at all, was that memorialized?
It was recorded when the crime scenes. Trooper recorded it.
My apologies. Before I get to that, sir,
Okay.
I can turn your attention just back to the text stream just for a moment. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
So I'm showing you a series of 7 photographs to ask you to look at those. First, I'm just going to ask you generally if you recognize those.
Yes.
And what do you recognize those to be?
It's the inside of the vehicle. Appears to be taking out the taking out the infotainment system.
The what system?
Infotainment system.
And the last photograph there, what, if anything, does that depict, sir?
That is the module for the infotainment system.
And what, if any, involvement did you have in respect to this investigation in regard to the infotainment system?
I didn't have anything. That was Trooper Nick Marinos to the infotainment system in this vehicle.
And you indicated earlier in your testimony that you had training as it relates to Burla, correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, relationship does Burla have with respect to the infotainment system?
They had tools to forensically diagnose the infotainment systems.
And if you know, are you familiar with whether or not that was able to be accomplished in this particular case?
It was not.
And do you know why not?
Because they had to go to, I think Burla didn't have the equipment, so they went to a...
Sustained.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Now, as far as those photographs, they fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed in the vehicle during the time that you were conducting your testing.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll seek to introduce them as the next 7 exhibits.
Any objections, Mr. Jackson?
I'm sorry, I was writing. What are those 5 photographs?
7.
No objection.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could just...
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could have the photograph labeled BEP2. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen and is now been marked as Exhibit 597?
Yes.
And what part of the vehicle are we looking at in this photograph?
That's the steering wheel.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have BEP3. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's now up on the screen and is marked as Exhibit 598?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this part of the photograph.
That is the infotainment system.
And as far as the infotainment system, when you were operating that vehicle, what, if anything, was displayed on that screen within the infotainment system?
If you were in drive, it just had the radio navigation stuff. But if you're in reverse, that's where the backup cameras and sensors would be.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have BEP4, sorry. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen as Exhibit 599?
Yes, I do.
And what, if anything, are we looking at in this system?
That's the push button start, the ignition.
So that's how this vehicle is started and stopped, essentially, as a push button start, is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have BEP22. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen as now marked as Exhibit 601?
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, you observe of significance in this.
Yes, that's the infotainment system. It's on, just that light here. Looks like it's the navigation.
Okay. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, if I could take you back just for a second to the VCH data and the kinematics of what you were testifying about just a moment ago. You had mentioned that with respect to the injury to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head that is consistent or could have been caused by striking his head on hard pavement and curbing, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as your training and experience in pedestrian collisions that you responded to in investigating on prior occasions, as far as the coldness of the ground being frozen, what, if any, impact could that have as far as in relation to the injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, as far as the visibility analysis that you were conducting on February 1st, You mentioned that that was memorialized with photographs as well as video. Is that correct?
Correct.
In the video that was taken, sir, was that in the interior of the vehicle, exterior of the vehicle, or both?
I believe it might have been just the interior.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you two discs.
Okay.
Do you recognize those?
Yes.
And those are the recordings of the visibility or the braking and acceleration tests from February 1st, both interior of the vehicle, exterior of the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to introduce and admit to next exhibits.
No objection.
So for
Before we get to those videos, Trooper, may I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I'm showing you another series of, I believe, 8 photographs. It's actually look over when you're finished. And do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs, Trooper?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
Those are photos from the backup cameras and sensor tests.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to introduce and admit to next exhibits.
Okay.
No objection.
Zero 6 13.
Thank you.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have from this packet photograph 2612. Trooper, if you could, please describe to the jury what we're looking at in this photograph that's now been marked as Exhibit 606.
Yes, this is the view from the operator as they would turn around and look to the back of the vehicle.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2616. And Trooper Paul, do you recognize what's up on the screen? It has now been marked as Exhibit 610.
Yes.
And can you please describe to the jury what, if anything, we're looking at here?
Yes, that's the view inside the vehicle showing the infotainment system and the backup cameras on it.
Now, as far as the backup cameras on this particular vehicle, what kind of view was able to be portrayed, or what did you observe on the screen when you placed the vehicle on reverse?
Yes, so this has this straight backup camera and also has a 360 overhead view of the vehicle.
And as far as the cameras within this vehicle are concerned, are we talking about one single camera, or how many cameras are encapsulating this 360-degree camera angle view?
It has the front and the sides and the rear cameras.
Now, if you could, using the laser pointer, just draw the jury's attention, direct the jury's attention to where you're talking about as far as the screen is concerned, depicting that camera angle view.
Okay. So the one on the left, that's the backup camera, and the one in the middle here would be the 360 overhead camera.
Now, in addition to what's depicted on the screen right now, as far as the vehicle on the 360 overhead, as the vehicle travels, what, if anything, in addition, is depicted on that particular portion of the screen as far as the 360 overhead?
It shows a sensor, and also when that sensor shows up in the area where the object that it is closer to.
And the sensor that you're talking about, how is that depicted on the screen?
It's a little red, like blip or little bar that would show up on the camera itself.
And is that something that appears as you approach an object from either in front or behind or something else?
Correct. As you approach the bar will, blink and will go get faster as you get closer to the object.
Now, with respect to the system overall, in addition to the visual cues depicted up on the screen, what, if any, auditory cues are also part of the system?
It will beep at you, and it will, as you get closer to the object, it will beep faster as you get closer to it.
And as far as getting closer to an object, the beeping that you're talking about increases in speed or rapidity, is that correct?
Correct.
And how does it, what, if anything, does it do as far as the volume of the beeping that you do?
I guess it would increase as it would get faster.
So it gets faster and it gets louder as you get closer to an object, correct?
Yep.
Now, with respect to sort of the middle of the screen here, up on the dashboard, what, if anything, do you observe there? Can you direct the jury's attention to what, if any, devices are up there right now?
Yes, so right here, this blue device, that's the V-Box Sport that attached to the windshield.
So that's something that you attach to the vehicle. It's not necessarily something that was in the vehicle when you began to operate it around.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2618. And Trooper Paul, if you could, describe to the jury, or using the laser pointer, if you could, draw the jury's attention to what, if anything, is significant to observe in this portion or closer-up image of the screen in the center console.
Yeah, so this is one on the left here is the backup camera, and the one in the middle is the 360 overhead camera. The bars and lines are showing the path of the vehicle.
Okay. Ms. Gilman, you can take this now. I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Now, Trooper Paul, as far as during this visibility analysis that you conducted, you testified earlier that you were primarily concerned with sort of whether or not the cameras and the auditory and visual cues worked properly with this vehicle and this system, correct?
Yes.
And during the course of your running these sort of forward and back reverse acceleration braking tests, as well as visibility analysis, what, if anything, did you observe with relation to the functionality of the cameras and the visual and auditory cues?
Everything seemed to be working properly.
Now, when you were operating the vehicle on February 1st and you shifted the vehicle into reverse, what would then sort of occur with the screen in the center of the data?
It would change from the navigation to the backup cameras.
And how long a period of time did that take as far as you shifted from drive to reverse on a number of different occasions while you were conducting your test, correct?
Yes.
And so how long a period of time are we talking about between the time that you shift the vehicle from drive or another gear to reverse for those screens to then display both the rear backup camera and the 360 overhead view?
It's fairly instantaneous, very quick.
Now, at some point during the course of the visibility analysis specifically, what, if anything, did you place behind the vehicle during your visibility analysis?
It was like a punching bag dummy
And where did you place that in relation to the vehicle?
along the right rear.
And as far as that punching bag dummy was concerned, about how far up off the ground was the top of that?
I'm not exactly sure the exact height of it. Maybe my height or taller.
And with respect, your height, sir, how tall are you?
5'6".
So it was at least 5'6", if not taller, is that correct?
Correct.
And with respect to that, placing it behind the vehicle, after it was placed behind the vehicle, at some point were you inside of the vehicle?
Yes.
And when you were inside of the vehicle and that was outside of the vehicle, what, if any, visual observations were you able to make with respect to its placement? And it's in the right rear passenger side of the vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
So what, if any, observations were you able to make with respect to that item or exemplar that was placed out there?
It would have been visible in the cameras.
Now, with respect to the visibility analysis that was conducted with respect to that, let me ask you this first. When I say exemplar pedestrian, can you explain sort of what that term means and how it relates to a visibility analysis?
So an exemplar pedestrian is, just like you said, we used a punch bag dummy. It was something that we used in place of a pedestrian to act like a pedestrian.
Now, when that exemplar pedestrian was placed in the rear passenger side area of the vehicle, what, if any, obstructions did you observe as far as just from a visual perspective, sort of turning your head or looking at cameras or anything else as far as where that exemplar was placed?
There were no obstructions.
Now, if that exemplar was placed directly next to the vehicle versus feet away from the vehicle, what, if any, difference did you know as far as visibility was concerned?
Yeah, so if it was placed right next to the vehicle, you would be blocked by the back pillar of the vehicle. If you place it maybe like 5 feet away, you would be able to see the dummy in the cameras and also in the side mirrors.
So at a distance of at least 5 feet, it was fully visible from where you sat in the vehicle?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if we could, I would ask, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what exhibit numbers they are, but the 2 videos that were just introduced.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have the exterior video first.
Just for the record, they are 604 and 605 now. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there for a moment. Mr. Paul, with respect to just for orientation purposes, if you could explain to the jury sort of where we are in relation to the Canton Police Department and where it was that you conducted these tests.
Yeah, so this is a view from the back of the Canton Police Department. So as you look at the Canton Police Department, we'd be on the left side of the Canton Police Department.
And as far as the vehicle in question, if you could, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention where that is and sort of where it's going to be in relation to the camera angle.
The vehicle is right here.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press it. If I could ask you to pause there for just a moment. Trooper Paul, during these testing that you were conducting here with the acceleration, reverse braking, all of those things, the highest speeds that you recorded during the course of that testing was 30 miles an hour, is that correct?
Yes.
And the highest speed that was contained within that BCH data for the second or the B of those two data sets, what was the highest miles per hour there?
24.
Now, with respect to the braking in this vehicle, what, if anything, was this vehicle quick with?
Had ABS brakes, anti-lock brake system.
And with relation to anti-lock brake system or ABS, what, if any, relationship does that have with regard to braking and what is then visible on the pavement?
It doesn't leave visible tire marks.
And why is that so?
Due to when the brakes, as the brake is about to lock up, it transfers over to another tire, so it kind of rotates between tires, so the tires never fully lock up and slide across the pavement.
Now, in relation to ABS not leaving marks on the pavement, what, if any, relationship does that have as far as the sound difference between ABS brakes and non-ABS brakes?
Yeah, the sound would be different because you would hear a car sliding across the pavement as opposed to just hard braking and engine slowing down.
As far as sort of screeching of braking and tire coming to a brake, what would you expect to hear with respect to ABS braking?
There would be no screeching of the tires.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play from here. Thank you. Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish the other video of the interior of the vehicle?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it briefly. Again, Trooper Paul, with reference to what's up on the screen, if you could, just using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to the screen in the center of the dashboard and just as far as what different parts of the screen are visible here.
So right here is the reverse camera, 360 camera.
And as far as this particular portion of the interior of the vehicle, are we looking at what was done with regard to acceleration or braking tests, or are we looking at the visibility now?
This is the visibility analysis.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, please record. I could ask you to just bring it back just a couple seconds. Trooper Paul, as far as the, this is a closer-up image of the screen that was visible in the center of the dash of the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, this may be a little difficult to see, if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, you observe on the screen while the vehicle's in reverse now, correct?
Correct.
If you could, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, you observe on the screen as the vehicle's in reverse with the exemplar pedestrian behind.
Yes, so this screen has now changed to a park assist screen, and it now shows a sensor for the back of the vehicle. And also same here, the sensor starts popping up in a yellow line for behind the vehicle.
And then in the actual camera view,
The actual camera view shows that's where our punch bag dummy was, and also shows where the sensor's back up to on the bottom here.
and Ms. Gilman, for the record, this is about 34 seconds in, if you could press play from here. Now, Trooper Paul, at some point, over the course of your investigation, over the course of this case, did you become aware of ring videos from Mr. O'Keefe's residence at 1 Meadows Avenue?
Yes.
And specifically, have you had occasion to see a video depicting the defendant backing out of the garage as snow was coming down?
Yes.
I'm going to allow it.
Yeah.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish to the jury with the witness on the stand, Exhibit 6, video number 153.
Objection, may we approach?
Yes.
Now, Trooper Paul, as I was asking before, with respect to have you had occasion to see a ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's house at 1 Meadows Avenue depicting the defendant or the defendant's vehicle backing out of a garage while snow was falling?
Yes.
Now, in addition to that, as you've already testified to, you made observations of the defendant's vehicle in the Canton Police Department garage on February 1st, is that correct?
Yes.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, may we play the video at this time?
Yes.
Your Honor, to save time, I'll stipulate to the video.
I want to see it for purposes of this voir dire. And in fact, I'd like to see the version that the defendants have with the focusing in on the tire.
Understood.
Both. Go ahead, Ms. Gilman, you show yours, and then I'm going to ask for the defense.
153. Now, Trooper, from your observations from this video, at some point, this vehicle either comes close or makes contact with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to your observations of this video and your observations of the defendant's vehicle, at some point, have you also seen photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
Yes.
And is your understanding that those photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle were taken by State Police Crime Scene Services on February 3rd, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with reference to your observations in this vehicle, what I'm going to ask you is in regard to the significance, significance of the impact of the two vehicles. In respect to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what, if anything, did you observe on his vehicle at that time?
At the photos or now?
Right now.
Oh, yeah. There was snow on the vehicle.
And then with respect to the contact between the defendant's vehicle and victim Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what, if anything, did you observe to occur with relation to the snow based on the significance of the impact between the two?
The snow doesn't move.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play.
All right. Can I see the other video, please? Yes, I think it's on, I know it's in evidence, but I think it's on your computer, your hard drive. All right. Thank you. Okay, could you turn the lights on, please?
Your Honor, if I could, there's just two photographs that I'd like to...
Sure.
Purposes. Ms. Gilman, if I could have what's now been marked as Exhibit 549.
And before you do that, what is the exhibit we just saw through your IT person? What
Your Honor,
number?
it's the same exhibit. It has not been enhanced in any way. It was just magnified for purposes of this, of showing it. In other words, the magnification is not embedded in the video. It's the
Okay.
same video.
Okay.
We just magnified it.
Okay.
You got it.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
And Trooper, do you recognize what's up on the screen now?
Yes.
And what are we looking at, and which area of the vehicle are we looking at?
It's the rear, John O'Keefe's car.
The driver's side, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if any, relationship does this portion of the vehicle we're looking at here have in relation to the video that we just watched?
It was faced, well, can you see it
Sorry,
from...
what was the answer? I didn't hear
Sorry,
you.
it was faced kind of the same way you see the back left rear corner of the vehicle as you do in this picture here.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have what's now been marked as Exhibit 559. And sir, is this the same driver's side rear of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
Yes, it is.
Now, as far as your observations of these photographs, what, if any, damage did you observe to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle in either the last exhibit or this exhibit itself?
There was no damage.
Now, as far as the impact, let me ask, as far as the damage that you observed to the taillight area of the defendant's vehicle, what, if any, opinion do you have as to the amount of force necessary in order to cause that damage?
Objection.
You need a foundation on this.
So, Trooper, over the course of your, I'm sorry, how many crashes have you investigated over your time with the cars unit?
I've been primary on 196 crashes.
And I know I'd asked you before about pedestrian crashes. Fair to say most of the remainder, if not all the remainder, involves vehicles colliding with other vehicles.
Correct.
Now, with respect to that experience in relation to vehicle crashes, what, if any, training or knowledge do you have in regard to sort of physical forces of vehicles in a collision sequence, and what kind of damage you would anticipate?
So, obviously, the higher the speed, the more damage. The lower speed, the less damage.
And what, if any, from the observation that you made in that video and the observations that you made of the defendant's vehicle. What you observed in the video, was that consistent with the damage that you observed to the defendant's vehicle?
Objection.
So I'm going to allow this with voir dire. I just need to hear this information.
Understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
It is not consistent with the tail light in this collision.
And why not?
For one thing, the collision, the tail light is, let's say, 42 to 50 inches off the ground. So that vehicle would have to have damage 42 to 50 inches off the ground because they would have to contact each other in the same distance from the ground, and there's no damage to that vehicle. So if the tail light breaks, it should leave some sort of scratching, maybe a dent, something on some sort of damage to that vehicle should have occurred.
And with respect to, I think you just answered it. So as far as Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what kind of damage would you expect from an impact significant enough to break the plastic on the taillight of the defendant's vehicle?
It would be probably higher speed than what we saw.
For purposes of the voir dire, I need to hear all of this, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
A higher speed than what we probably would saw in there. If it's not, it was minimal, maybe it would crack a tail light or something like that, but it wouldn't. I mean, the damage is different. And also, we have a bumper that's also in the way too.
And to that point, Trooper, when it comes to a bumper, from a functional standpoint, what is a bumper and what does it do with respect to a vehicle in a collision sequence?
The bumper is, it's basically meant as another cushion to absorb the impact to another vehicle, from one vehicle to another vehicle. And it kind of sticks out to kind of also preserve whatever, the tail lights and everything else and damage on top of it.
So in order, from your experience as far as responding and investigating collisions, specifically collisions between motor vehicles, the speed that you observed the defendant's vehicle traveling in that video, what, if any, relationship does that have, specifically also as to the bumper, as to the damage that you observed to the defendant's vehicle?
So if you look at the defendant's vehicle, there is a scratch mark that is along the left side starts from her bumper around the rear. That could be consistently with his bumper. That would be around the same height level. He has a little ridge there on his bumper. So that bumper couldn't hit that little ridge. And also the bumper in itself in here is a different material. Hers is a little lighter, like a glossy colored paint. This is more a duller flat finish. So it might have some, why it would show up on her bumper more than it would show up on his bumper.
And finally, sir, in your opinion, the damage to the defendant's taillight is that something that could have occurred or could have been caused by the crash or the contact of the vehicles that you observed in that video?
Objection.
No.
So again, this is voir dire, Mr. Jackson, going here.
No.
And again, sir, why not?
For one thing, the bumpers, you have to go push through the bumpers in order to hit the taillight against the other vehicle. And there's no damage to that, significant damage to a bumper in order to push back into the car.
And again, there was no snow on the vehicle. By that, I mean Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle that even came off the vehicle that you observed during the course of that contact between the two vehicles.
That's correct.
I have nothing further on.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Did you ever put the two cars together?
I did not.
No, you didn't, did you? You never tested whether or not the SUV would match up with the Traverse, did you?
What do you mean?
You just said, oh, look, one of them has matte finish, one of them has glossy finish, so it couldn't have happened, right?
No, I'm confused by the question. I'm talking about the tail light. We're talking about the tail light.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the tail light? We're talking about the bumper.
Yeah, we were talking about the taillight.
So one person at a time. You both are talking over each other.
You started talking about the bumpers.
Yes.
You said, well, one has matte finish and one has glossy finish, right?
Yes.
And you said, well, you'd expect one of them to slide off of each other, and they could have done this and they could have done that, right?
Not slide off each other.
You were suggesting that the two cars wouldn't match up such that the taillight could make contact with any part of the Traverse. That's what you were suggesting.
I'm saying it didn't match up because there's no damage to the Traverse.
You didn't test whether or not the lens, the right rear lens on the SUV, could match up to any part of the Traverse, right? And make contact, physical contact with it, right?
When I see a picture of the Traverse,
Yes or no?
when I see the picture
No,
of the
this
Traverse,
is a voir dire. I need the information, Mr.
you asked me a
Jackson.
question.
Yeah,
I said,
yes or no question, Trooper.
I don't think so, but
Mr. Jackson, just for there's no jury here. This is for purposes of what I have to rule on. The more information I have, the better off I am in being able to rule on it.
Let me take a breath.
So this is you trying to keep the evidence out. So you want to give me the information.
Understood. Did you or did you not ever do a test where you backed the Lexus up against the Traverse?
we did not.
Did you or did you not ever do a test where you put the two cars together and measured them?
No.
Did you ever measure the taillight of the SUV, the black SUV, against any area on that Traverse?
No.
Did you ever do any force multiplier tests to determine the forces necessary to crack the SUV's convex taillight?
No.
Did you ever do any testing to determine whether or not a plastic taillight, under how much pressure a plastic taillight would need to be subjected before it would crack?
No.
Did you ever do any testing to determine whether or not if a plastic taillight came in contact with a metallic portion of another SUV, whether it would leave any mark?
I haven't done any tests, and I've seen crashes where headlights have struck other vehicles. That's kind of where the experience comes from.
Fair enough. But I'm guessing that those crashes are probably different speeds and higher speeds. Not this, right?
I've had multiple crashes at different speeds.
So have you ever had
yes.
a crash where you've investigated, the Massachusetts State Police has been brought in to investigate a crash where the car was going in reverse at about a half a mile an hour?
Half a mile an hour?
Whatever that was.
Are you saying the SUV is going half a mile per hour?
Well, you're the reconstructionist. Give me an estimate of how fast you think that SUV was going at the point of contact with the Traverse.
Maybe like 1 to 2 miles per hour?
Okay, fair enough. Have you ever been called in to a crash, to investigate a crash, where the cars have collided at 1 mile an hour?
I've had pedestrian crashes that have been at a very low speed.
Okay, that wasn't my question. That wasn't quite my question.
Okay.
My question is, have you been called in to a crash involving two vehicles
Yeah.
that have made contact at about a mile an hour?
I have seen testing for vehicles at low speeds. So next time I have been called to a crash, I go to fatality crashes, but I have seen testing for vehicles at low speed impacts.
Okay. How low speed?
Like just the bump.
So like this?
Yes.
Did you see any damage?
Yes. All right. Well, minimal damage.
Right. In what circumstances? Minimal damage, like, I don't know, like a cracked taillight.
No, like just a little bit of rub off on the paint.
Right? Or you might see nothing, right?
Yes.
You've certainly seen circumstances in which two cars come in contact and there's absolutely no physical damage to either car, nothing observable, right?
Have I gone to crashes? Have I seen no physical damage on a car?
Or just in common sense, just everyday life, where one car backs into another car at the Jiffy Lube, makes contact and drives away, and there's no damage.
Not normally. It's usually something with car and car impacts.
Like what's the something?
A crack or a paint, something chip, scratches.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you put a piece of metal, in that scenario, you put a piece of metal, steel, right, against a piece of plastic, which one do you think is going to give way first?
You'll still see some damage to both vehicles at a speed.
Which one would give way first?
Between metal, depends what speeds. And what we're talking about, you're just saying plastic and metal. You're giving a pretty general, broad plastic and metal
Triple Paul.
analysis here.
You admit, you got to agree with me, that there are circumstances in which low speed, very, very low speed contact between two cars can certainly leave damage on one and not damage on the other, damage on both, or no damage on either one. Observe.
Yes, I just said in a situation where the scratch on the side of her car
Right.
had a scratch mark and his doesn't appear to have anything.
And you said, under question by Mr. Lally, that certain circumstances like this could lead to a lens material, right, plastic material cracking, right?
Say again? Like, one of these.
Just a few minutes ago, Mr. Lally,
I'm trying to answer your question. Sorry, yes.
Mr. Lally asked you a question a few minutes ago, and you indicated that something might show up on a bumper. Something might, like a taillight, might actually crack, correct? In a low-speed impact.
Until it might crack in a low speed impact?
Correct.
It might crack.
Okay, now, Mr. Lally also said you saw this video where the cars come close to or make contact, right? That's how we worded the question. Remember that?
Come close. Yeah.
Which one is it? Did it come close or did it make contact?
I said it might. I don't know if that scratch from the side is. It's something that's consistent with the height of the bumper. Like I said, I didn't measure them side by side, but you can clearly see there's a scratch on the side, and that's something that looks like that would come back. So I have to look at the bumper, and I see the bumper, and it has that little divot. And I look at her side of her car with that scratch mark. That kind of lines up a little bit of why that could be where that was from.
I thought you said there was no damage on that car, on the Traverse.
There is no damage, and that's why I went to why there's the two different paint materials there. That why one could have showed up on her car because it's that flat, the glossy paint on there, and it could have scratched on it. While you have something that's a little more rougher texture, with like a flat, flat color on there, that wouldn't leave on there.
So you just described a circumstance in which two cars come in contact, you don't see any observable damage on one, and you do on the other. That's what
I suggested that when you asked me that a second ago.
Yes. With regard to the video, let's get back to the question that I asked, which was, in that video, did the SUV come close to, or did it come in contact with the Traverse?
Again, I don't know because I'm saying based off the damage that it's something consistent with that. So most likely it did come in contact with the bumper to bumper, but I don't know definitively because there is no damage to his car, but it's something that could explain why there's a scratch mark alongside the right rear side of his car, or her car.
Did you see the tire move, sir? Did you see the wheel on the Traverse move in that video?
No, I couldn't see the wheel move.
I beg your pardon?
I didn't see it move. If I did, I didn't observe it moving. If it moved, it moved. I didn't observe it moving. I wasn't looking at the wheel.
When was the first time you saw that video?
I don't really know. It's been a little while.
Well, I don't know what a little while means.
Like a year ago, I think.
Okay. So you saw that video a year ago. Did you put anything about that video in your report, which is wherever it is, right here? I'm looking at your entire car's report. Did you put anything in this car's report about watching that video?
No, because I watched the video like after the report was done. And honestly, I watched it the first time on Court TV. So
who on Court TV during this trial?
Like
Prior.
no, when it was on TV at some point.
When did you and Mr. Lally have a discussion about you testifying about this video?
That was a couple weeks ago.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
A couple weeks ago.
What's a couple of weeks ago? Is it 10 days ago?
2 weeks ago. I mean, 2 weeks ago. Couple.
Okay.
Two.
Where did you two meet?
At the DA's office.
Was that at your request or was that at Mr. Lally's request?
It was a pre-conference hearing, or pre-trial hearing.
Right. Well,
Or pre-trial conference. Sorry.
done?
So, yes.
We're talking over each other. Try not to talk over each other.
I'm trying not either.
Let's both try harder.
Okay.
Who set up the meeting?
For my pre-trial,
Yes.
Okay.
Paul.
Adam Lally.
Who was at the meeting?
Everybody sitting right here, Lieutenant Tully.
Lieutenant Tully, you, Adam Lally, Laura McLaughlin. I'm guessing Ms. Gilman was not there.
She was not there, correct?
Did Mr. Lally show you this video at that meeting?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he intended to ask you some questions about this video at that meeting?
Yes.
Did he ask you whether or not you could render an opinion as to whether or not the impact that you saw, or lack thereof, whatever the case may be, was consistent or inconsistent with damage to the taillight?
Yes.
Did you tell him that you would give him such opinion if called upon at trial?
Yes.
Did anybody take any notes?
I don't know.
Were you taking notes?
Yes.
Where are those notes, Trooper Paul?
I think I just, well, no, it's not on this specifically, but just, make sure I had, my everything checks and balance. And for what I want to talk about, what we're going to talk about.
Make sure you had
My
what?
checks and balances, sorry.
Checks and balances.
Just make sure we're on the same page of what we understand what's going on in the trial.
You want to make sure that you're on the same page with Mr. Lally about what's going on in the trial.
Yes.
All right. Did Mr. Lally take notes?
I have no idea.
You were watching him. I mean, was he writing something down?
I wasn't paying attention to his note taking.
Ms. McLaughlin was there. Was she taking notes?
I don't know.
You didn't see her either?
I don't know if there were people who were taking notes, writing stuff down, or what they're writing stuff down in relation to our little conference.
Did you give him an opinion? We've asked whether or not you were asked to give an opinion, and you said, yes, 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 I was.
Yep.
Did you give an opinion at that meeting about whether or not you believe, in your opinion, the contact between the SUV and the Traverse, the Lexus and the Traverse, could result in the damage to the taillight?
Yes.
What did you tell him in the meeting?
What we talked about already in the stand here.
Okay. So what you relayed to him was exactly what you've relayed in this morning.
Yes.
All right. And he told you that he was going to ask, I'm going to ask you to look at the video, correct?
Yes.
You're going to be asked a series of questions about that video, correct?
He told me the video, and he said, okay, this is the video. This is what they think the taillight was broken. And these are the pictures of his car that they take. So they asked my opinion on, do you think that's where a taillight would be broken?
And he told you, you need to make sure that you tell the jurors that could have happened in this impact, right?
He didn't tell me that. Make sure jurors. I mean, that's my opinion on. It doesn't appear to happen in that video.
Did he tell you that it would be helpful to the prosecution if you said that it would be, that it was inconsistent with the taillight break?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it. Did he tell you it would be helpful to the case if you said that?
No.
But you knew it would be, right?
I'm just stating what I saw on my professional opinion on what it is.
Got it.
If it looked like it was consistent, I would say it's consistent. If it wasn't consistent, it's not consistent. I'm not going to.
I'm sure that's what you would say.
Okay, so comments are not appropriate for the jury. They're also not very good for me, Mr. Jackson.
Understood, Your Honor. Did you formalize your new opinion? Because this is a new opinion, right? You've never been asked this opinion before.
Yes.
Did you formalize this new opinion in any kind of report or memorialize it in any way?
No.
Did Mr. Lally ask you to create a report of some sort that you can turn over to the defense so that we would know that you have a new opinion that you're going to testify about?
No.
Did you save those notes that you took about making sure that you were on the same page as Mr. Lally?
Yeah, I saved mine.
Where are they?
They're my report.
They're in your report?
Yeah, as I was writing my report, I just kind of highlighted stuff that I want to make sure I memorize and remember my report.
Okay. I'm talking about notes specifically about this video, seeing this video and rendering a new opinion about this video.
No, I didn't have notes specifically about this video. I didn't write anything down saying I must do this on this video.
Did you write anything down about the new opinion that you would come up with related to this video?
No, I did not.
I just want to know.
Yep.
And your opinion, ultimately, that you imparted to Mr. Lally in that meeting was that the car did not move and the snow did not move, correct?
Correct.
I think that's all I have.
All right. Did you want to follow up at all, Mr. Lally?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. So, Trooper, you are all set for today. We will see you Monday morning.
Thank you.
Okay?